E aí pessoal, tudo bem? No vídeo de hoje eu quero apresentar para vocês Paul Roberts. Ele tem um canal no YouTube nos Estados Unidos que se chama The Nature of Fishing. É um canal voltado para entender, para compreender o bass, o comportamento do bass, como ele reage às mudanças, enfim, ele é hoje um cientista do bass e é uma pessoa muito bacana, e eu quero muito que vocês conheçam ele hoje comigo. Nós vamos conversar também sobre a nova estação que está chegando aqui no Brasil, e vocês veem como ele até estudou um pouquinho do nosso país também para compreender e para poder nos ajudar um pouquinho mais a entender o comportamento do bass aqui no Brasil. Com vocês, Paul Roberts, The Nature of Fishing.
Okay, I'm Paul Roberts, and I'm a longtime serious angler, and I've been a scientist as well. My interests are in the sciences, fisheries, physiology, limnology. Essentially, I'm interested in what goes on under that water. And as an angler, a fisherman, a longtime fisherman since I was very small, that's what has fascinated me. And it has also driven my interest in science and in nature in general. So I often come at fishing maybe from a little different perspective. My head's under the water, and I want to know what is going on under there, how those fish behave, what runs them.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is good. Paul, sorry to interrupt you, but again, this is so good. And the main reason, and first of all, thank you for being here with us today. But I want to ask you, and I think getting the opportunity to talk with you, I want to ask you specifically, we are just getting into spring right now here in Brazil. Okay. And of course, through your knowledge, we're going to be focusing on bass, as probably the guys would be knowing that. But okay. I believe that, although, correct me if I'm wrong, but bass can relate to different species as well. You know, we can take a basis on that behavior to different species as well.
Oh,
or...
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So my question, I mean, to start our conversation, it will be what I should be looking for as far as behavior. I know this can be a long answer, but you know, as far as best behavior, we know that especially in the spring, you have the pre-spawn, the spawn, and the post-spawn. So right. I don't know if you want to go that way or...
Yeah, I can do that. That's okay. Fine. That's language that bass fishermen know in particular. And let me just say that bass are generalist feeders. They have many ways of making a living. So that's one of the reasons that fishing for bass translates to other species and back and forth. If you fish for bass and know them well, it puts you in good position with many other fishes as well. So the spawn, most anglers break it down into the pre-spawn, that's before the spawning, and that's the actual spawning act. That's the spawn. And post-spawn is after they've dropped their eggs and finished. And males and females do different things. So I break it down a little bit differently. And what I look at is and in your area, since you don't get snow and ice,
yes.
Your winter would essentially be what I call a feeding binge period. During the winter, during the off season, that is when those fish are beginning to develop their reproductive tissues. Okay, they're developing sperm and eggs, and that's very costly. So they have to feed, and that starts in the fall, essentially. They begin putting fat on, they develop their gonads. It starts in the fall. And then through the winter, here, when it gets cold enough, there's a quiescence period, almost like a hibernation period. They're active. You can catch them. They'll feed, but they're way slowed down. Mm-hmm. Where you are, with your climate, your water temperatures don't drop. Could you tell me your water temperatures in the winter?
They will not drop to, less than 45, 40, 48 Fahrenheit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's known about bass is around the 50 degree Fahrenheit mark is where growth takes off. Okay. Below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, their growth drops off. And that's a physiological constant for the species. But where they've been transplanted, where they might live, the climates can be a little bit different. So my guess is during the winter, your fish are feeding very well. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they are, I'm guessing they're about as fat as they're going to get during the year coming into the spawn.
Yeah.
The pre-spawn, okay, is, we'll define for you, I call it the preliminary spawn, and that is when the behavior begins to change. What we call pre-spawn here, and I call the feeding binge period, all right? It's going to be a little bit prolonged for you through the winter. For us, it's after ice out. It's like a window when things start to reheat. Those fish go on a feeding binge. And that's when everybody's out there catching them. The fish come, because they're seeking heat, okay, they come up higher in the water column, okay? Yeah. The colder the climate, the more that heat matters. As you go further south, or maybe where you are, the heat matters, but the intensity may not be there to draw fish. But I look for fish coming up in the water column. During the winter, they're down deep. They're close to the bottom. They're relating to the bottom. They come up to the surface waters that are now warmed, as do the prey fishes. So I begin looking for fish near the surface in heated water, and they're feeding like crazy. And when you hear all about lure sales, lots of lures work during this time. It's a great time for the guys to go out there and sell their fishing lures, because they want to go out there and just knock hell out of them. And that's a feeding binge, and there's a lot of options there. Okay.
Yeah.
As we start to creep toward the spawn, what I call the preliminary spawn, spawning is when they're dropping eggs.
Right.
Okay. They're dropping eggs. They're actually reproducing. Just before that, the bass go from that feed binge. Food is the primary focus. Then their behavioral focus begins to change to other bass and to spawning substrate, spawning sites. And that is gravels, harder bottom, where their nests can survive. Okay. So they've stopped chasing. Not entirely, but you can throw your reaction baits and you've mentioned, mm-hmm. Throwing those, and the bite's off. It's like, oh, what happened? A lot of those fish have started to move toward spawning habitat. All right. You'll want to identify that in your waters. Shallows with hard bottom, firm bottom of some type.
Right.
And they are beginning to get focused on other bass. They're becoming social, and they're less food oriented. They will feed, but you need to slow down. And that's where certain plastic worms, the senko, the stick worms, we call them, all kinds of things that slow down. Tubes, there's a lot of options there, but the reaction bite is waning. That's the pre-spawn, and I'm watching the water temperatures. I'm watching to see that shift. And when they stop biting the reaction baits, I move into spawning habitat or just outside of it, and I start switching to slower presentations, more feeding type presentations. When the spawn comes on, the spawn itself. First, do you have any questions or comments about that?
No, I think we're fine. No, we're going. Actually, I would ask you. You mentioned that they usually go for hard bottoms to make their nests, but what it'll be a hard bottom when you have ponds, and our ponds here are usually muddy, and
yes, ours are too.
Yeah, we don't have that much of stone sometimes, You know, we might put them in, but usually we have more like grassy areas and different type of species of you know, forage. But
so are your bass reproducing?
yes, they are.
So they're not just stocked. Okay.
No, they are.
Okay, good. So bass have adapted. Populations of bass have adapted to things in very muddy waters. They do not spawn on pure mud. The eggs suffocate. Yeah. Okay. So firm substrate can be maybe traditionally it would be gravel, like pea-sized gravel.
Okay.
But they've adapted to spawn on coarse vegetation. In fact, I'd say cobble gravel and coarse low vegetation are probably the primordial, the original. That's what bass evolved to spawn on. Okay. But they've adapted in places to spawn on logs. There have been bass that have spawned in 60 feet of water, but they're up high on the tops of cut off trees. Okay. They're over 60 feet of water. They're only 8 feet down or 5 feet down, but they're spawning on up in the trees. Okay. In flooded reservoirs. Right. Others have learned to spawn on rushes. It's a type of plant like we call them cattails or reeds.
We had that
where the roots are exposed. Yeah. Bass will clear away the silt and mud to get to the firm substrate. So if your ponds are very muddy, there are certain locations where bass will successfully spawn. If they cannot successfully spawn, they die out in that location because bass show what's called site fidelity. And that is, they will spawn where they were born.
Okay.
Or in the vicinity. And bass will return, successful bass or bass will return, the males make the beds, they will return to the same site each year. Now, if the spawning sites are filled and there's a lot of bass, then there are explorers. There are bass that will go out and try other areas. What that can do is over time, if there are other areas that they can get success out of, those will become spawning sites too. Mm-hmm. But if they don't, the population tanks and they don't survive. So in your muddy ponds, you're going to look for, there are going to be certain locations that bass can successfully spawn on, and they'll revisit those each year.
That's usually going to be outside of the channels per se. I mean, if we have, for instance, on a reservoir, you have deep water, usually very deep water or deeper water than the ponds. The ponds will go 20 foot, 25 foot sometimes, you know, deep. So it's not that deep. But if you go to a reservoir, they usually, as you were saying, they will go for shallow places and shallow water to spawn. And I think everybody here knows that. But so we got the reservoirs, and the reservoirs have stones for sure, and different specific areas that they can spawn and put their eggs on. So after they put that, how do they? I mean, if I'm fishing for it, you know, should I be throwing? Where should I be looking for them if I'm fishing at the spawn?
At the spawn itself. First of all, how deep bass will spawn is often dependent on water clarity. Okay. If you have very, very clear water, bass have been known to spawn as deep as 20 feet, but that's extremely clear water and warm enough water. They have to have, for those fry to do well, the water has to be at least 60 degrees. Okay. And up to a point. So you look at your water clarity, and bass will spawn usually, in my waters, they're spawning in 18 inches, you know, like, I don't know how many centimeters that is.
But, very shallow,
Yeah, very shallow, out to maybe 4 feet, depending on water clarity. And that also depends on water temperature. If it, you know, they've got to stay up where it's warm. Again, I'm in a cooler climate than you are, I believe. And we had fronts that come through that can drop water temperatures. And so, you know, there's kind of a battle going on between the environment and the fish. It may be less of an issue for you. But anyway, you're looking for your spawning habitat. Say you identify spawning habitat, and I'll tell you what the classic places would be. They can't handle wind and waves. That destroys the nests. So a bass spawns on a place that gets a lot of wind. It kills the nest. They don't spawn there. So they're in protected areas, okay? Usually wind protected. Mm-hmm. These areas also, at least here in the north, warm quicker. And once water takes on heat, it's just the nature of water, it holds heat. So once the sun gets high enough, the water starts to heat, and that is the cue. Once you hit a certain amount of stability at a certain temperature, that's the cue to start. And I want to get off on this, but where you are, since your water temperatures don't drop that far, I'm going to guess your spawning seasons start a bit earlier than mine do, and they may last a bit longer.
Yeah.
Like in southern Florida, bass spawn for 6 months. Up here, or say in the far north of their range in southern Canada, 3 weeks, and they're done.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the window they got to work with. So your fish are reacting to temperature is important, but the natural rhythm is more important, and that's probably mediated by photoperiod and increasing temperature. They're going to notice the slight increase as you come into spring. They're going to notice that stuff, as will the native species that then produce the food.
Yeah.
That's the whole key. Bass adapt to get their young into position to feed. When there's a lot of food, that's when young bass survive. That's kind of the critical juncture. That's what really affects spawn timing. Where I am in the north, water temperature is enormous. Mm-hmm. Over 99.9% of the bass's range, water temperature rules the show.
Yeah.
But there are places where there are other cues, and that's getting more towards subtropical places, or places like where you're at, where you're quite a narrow band of temperate climate. So as far as fishing for them, finding them,
yes,
find your spawning areas, these protected from the wind, with some firm substrate. Luckily, bass beds are something you can see.
Sometimes
it's worth cruising around. I'll tell you, I will suggest to every fisherman, walk your pond. Everyone wants to get out there and start casting.
Yeah,
Everyone wants to get out there. I caught them here last time. Bass move, okay? So even in small waters.
Yeah.
So I am a big time walker. Walk that pond. Walk that pond. Find your bass beds. Find your habitat options. Find the prey. And man, that will put you in fish faster than anything. Okay, especially in the pond.
Perfect. And okay, as you correct me if I'm wrong, but usually as far as structure goes, the bass doesn't stay in the structure; they stay right outside the structure, waiting to ambush, isn't it? Or that changes. And I'm just saying that because my question is, of course, they did the bed, okay, they did their bed and they're laying their eggs, but that's usually in the structure, or really close to this, or not. They can be on an open space. So I'm asking this because I want to know where to throw that bait instead of throwing right over the nest or on the side. I don't know if you got that.
Yeah, I think so. So you're asking when you have a bed, you're talking about bed fishing, when you're fishing to a bed?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Okay, the water is clear to muddy, but I can see the bed. I can see the nest. And sometimes, so where should I be throwing if I see the nest? Right on it, or should I pass it alongside?
Okay, I'm sorry, but this is going to get a little complicated.
Here we go.
So
here we go. Yeah.
Where do we begin? Okay, if you see my documentary, on the spawn.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's in English. But that goes through the progression of behaviors up until egg laying and after. And those behaviors are different.
Yeah.
When male bass make the eggs, male bass make the nests. They dig the nests, and the females come in and lay. So if the nest is in a good location. So the male comes in. When the male first comes in to sweep the substrate and make a nest, they're very spooky. They're easily frightened. Okay, So you are fishing outside of the bed usually. They're not defending the bed, they're defending a territory. And once they make that bed, you're going to sneak in quietly, and those bass the males are what I call soliciting. And that means they are they're trying to attract a female.
Right.
Okay. And the females cruise along and look at the beds and decide who's who. Okay. So the male's job is to swim, I've got a hand up here, swim back and forth about 15 feet. You're going to have to.
Don't worry about the feet. I'll translate that. Yeah.
On either side. They've got about a 25 to 30 foot swath that they use as their territory out in front of their bed. They defend it from other males and intruders. But when they first make that bed and start setting up that territory and are soliciting, they're easily frightened. So, and that's that is a gentle kind of approach in your fishing. After the eggs are laid, okay, and I'm going to talk about females separately.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after the eggs are laid, the males suddenly have what's called the behavior is called or the drive is called parental investment. They got eggs, they've got babies, and like a bear, they're going to defend them. So they become defensive. Their own well-being starts to take a back seat. You can still spook them, but so when they first have their eggs, yeah, you can move them off. But as those eggs mature, and especially when they hatch, the bass won't leave the nest. You have to really, really stomp on them. And that's where most bed fishing happens, where people are throwing lures onto the bed. And the bass will often either attack it because it's an intruder, or pick it up and take it outside of the bed, just cleaning up.
Yeah.
They do that. They're sweeping, they're tending those eggs.
I saw some situations where I could see actually it's a private lake. There is no fishing there. It's not allowed.
Okay.
So yeah, I go crazy every time I go there because I see the nest and I see everything. I cannot throw anything, but it's inside.
Hey, but it's an awesome thing to be able to do.
Oh yeah, to watch.
It's an awesome thing to be able to do.
And that's my question to you, because it is on a private. Actually, it's a condominium. It's a condo, and there's this beautiful lake and a lot of bass. I mean, big.
We'll get to know the owners.
Yeah, yeah. But there's a lot of signs.
All the wine.
Yeah, exactly. So I saw, and I don't know if what I saw, and that's my question to you. I saw the two fish there. The larger one, which is probably the female, and the male. I don't know if that's a behavior that is a regular behavior to see the two of them. And actually, I just out of curiosity, I throw some bread on the top,
yeah.
The water, to see their reaction, or I throw some leaves.
And they didn't pay any attention.
No attention at all.
No,
they didn't
exactly.
move. And I was thinking.
See, that's why it's good to watch fish. And people are so fast to cast that they miss the important stuff.
Yeah.
It's better to make 50 good casts than 1,000 dumb ones.
Yeah, exactly. I know
by far. Yeah. That's why I say walk the pond, observe. That's a gold mine for you. If you get to see fish operating without being disturbed.
Oh my God, and not being able to throw a lure.
I can tell you.
But what's going on there? What's going on there? Because
that's a spawning pair.
Oh, that's a spawning pair. So that's a spawning pair right there.
Yes, and when they are actually spawning, they can be the most difficult to catch because they're not paying attention. I talk about the pre-spawn, the preliminary spawn, where they're beginning to become social. They're beginning to go away from the food, pay less. The focus is not food. It becomes other bass. When they're mated up, they're paired, that's what they're focused on. There's aggression there. And if you can get them to stop looking at each other and look out, you can get them to chase something, and they will chase, because as the eggs are coming out here, predators like bluegills will come in and try to grab the eggs. And both male and female at that point, we'll run them a short distance, but they're focused. And often it's really hard to catch them. And quite honestly, I'll even beat. Let them do their thing. And then after that, the female usually stays with the male in my area anyway, and from what I've been able to read, 2 days, 2.5 days. And they spawn in maybe 1 hour, 1 or 2 hour bouts. Usually here, when the light level, in the afternoon, when the cloud's up, or in the evening. Apparently they don't spawn at night.
Okay.
So what you've got is, so when the females appear, you've got a male on a bed. He's got a good bed. He's solicited. He's got a female now. She comes in and they spawn in, say, in an afternoon. They spawn together for an hour or two. She drops back and she is often visible. One of the signs that your bass are about to spawn is, I mentioned that bass start to follow the heat up.
Yes.
But they also are a fish that has a closed swim bladder. And what that means is that's the air bladder, that they adjust their buoyancy. Some fish have a ducted one. It has a tube where they can cough air in and out. They can bring air in, bring air out. So they can change depths enormously.
Wow.
Bass cannot do that.
Okay.
So bass, when they need to change great depths, and we're talking greater than 10 feet,
okay,
they can make short adjustments. But usually what's comfortable for them is about a 10-foot swath. And if you've ever scuba dived, if you go below your compensation, you sink.
Yeah.
If you go above it, you float. Same thing for bass. Think about it. If they want to conserve energy, and that's what life is about energy, or about energy in and out. If they drop too deep, then they sink. They have to swim to keep up. Yeah. If they go up, they have to swim. They have to keep their fins moving. Yeah. So they like to, when they're resting, be at their compensation depth. If they drop 5 feet, they're going to start sinking, and they have to start finning. If they have the energy, great. So bass will be compensated, say, for 5 feet and go to the surface, or go down to 10 feet and feed and feed and feed. They got the energy, but they come back to rest at their compensation depth. Now, why that's important, and it's obvious why it's important, especially in summer when things get deep and things. But for spawning, I've never heard anyone talk about this, but this is what I see. I do hear people talk about it, but they don't know what it's about. Every spring, the discussion forums, on fishing forums, where people are talking away, every year it's the same. I get to watch the whole seasonal rhythm come around again and again and again. Yeah. I'm seeing big bass holding right on the surface, and they won't bite anything. Ooh, it's driving me crazy. And I see that every early spring.
Right.
And what is happening is, when the bass are about to spawn, they first group together, the females in particular, and then they adjust themselves to spawning depth. And here it's 2 feet of water. So they're right under the surface. They want cover, okay? But they're right close to the surface. And they are just hanging there, and their fins aren't moving. They're just compensated and hanging out and waiting for the cues to go onto the spawn banks and spawn. Okay. A lot of people will fish under the bass at that point. This also happens post-spawn. Through the spawn and into the post-spawn, bass are acclimated to the surface. So the fish you saw, let's see, get us back on track.
Oh, yeah.
I'm watching for that. Females come in, they get solicited by a male, they come in, they spawn, spend 2 days there, darn difficult to catch. But females, when they spend 2 hours spawning, but then they drop back. They still hold high in the water column, and they're often visible, okay? So you've got a male, so as you're doing your walk, find a male on the bed, okay? Yep. If he is invested in that bed, means he's got eggs, okay? Watch for a female just deeper. She's bigger, okay? Yeah. She's also more apt to feed. The male is more apt to clear something out of his bed or something, or attack, potentially. And the more invested in his eggs and fry he is, the less distance he's going to chase, okay? It becomes more about the babe, the young. The females, though, are catchable. And again, it's slow presentations. It's the same as the preliminary spawn thing. I love a tube bait, something that falls in front of them slowly and without spooking them. And that's a good time to catch some of the largest bass because you can see them,
Right.
And they are vulnerable. But you have to know where to look for them. They're not at the bed site. They're just outside the bed site. Mm-hmm. These females will stay with the male for a while. Then they drift off and usually will go find another male or will recuperate for a little bit and then come back and do another spawning bout. Okay. Especially where you have an extended spawn, those females are going to spawn multiple times.
Oh, that's interesting.
And they're going to travel up and down the banks, and they're usually on the first drop-off wherever they're safe. They're high in the water column, but if there's cover, or they drop just below being able to be seen from the surface. Birds are their probably primary fear.
Concern, yeah.
And so those females, those bigger fish, are just outside the spawning habitat. I don't fish to males. That's because they're the smaller fish in the pond, and they have a heck of a job ahead of them. And I feel for them. Yeah. They work their butts off, don't eat, and we can discuss that issue if you want. And I'll just say that fishing to spawning bass or spawning males is not a death knell for the population, which some people will say. But in the far north, it's a much bigger risk than it is in the far south. In the far south, they spawn for such a long period of time. Mm-hmm. There's so much food. It seems, and it doesn't take a lot of bass spawn success to repopulate the pond. It may be less diverse if you're killing off some of those beds.
Yeah.
But in the north, when you have a 3-week window, it's very intense. And that's why in the north of the United States and southern Canada, regulations, there's no fishing during the spawn. Mm-hmm. So it depends on where you live. So when people get in an argument, should you fish the spawn? Should you not fish the spawn? Depends on where you live, okay?
Yeah.
But I prefer not to fish to the males. I just respect what they're doing. And they're also the smaller fish in the ponds. And I'm after the females.
Yeah,
but so they're usually out of sight. If they're up spawning, you'll see them. They're holding in what I call classic pose. Male on the bed. So male on the bed, here's the shelf. Here's the drop off.
Yeah.
He's up on the shelf with his bed. Just off the drop is the female. She's either right up visible when she's spawning, or she drops down just out of sight or into cover. And she'll move up and down that bank looking for males through the spawn season. Those are the fish I would target with tubes or stickworms, etc. Just slower presentations.
Yeah, a bladed jig on that, it might not be the case. I mean, if you're looking for, or can be.
Yeah. That's you figure it out. It's sort of like there's a lot of options out there. You don't need them all.
Oh my God! Yes, exactly.
You don't need them all.
Yeah. I know, because a lot of times, I mean, there's a lot of guys here that year-round uses a spinnerbait. They adapt their fishing to spinnerbait basically, or a streamer. And that's what they do. And I think that's okay. And that's actually that's very smart, because not that expensive. It can get expensive, but it's smart.
Yeah. Well, at the other side of that fence, and this is largemouth bass fishing. They are generalist predators, extremely variable in their behavior and abilities and habitat use. They can, this is why they are one of the most dangerous invasive species. You put them in a water body and they can wipe out all the native species because they can feed on anything, anywhere. They're enormously effective generalist predators. But what that means for the fishing is, that's why our bass fishing is as big a market and a big, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry here.
Yeah.
Because they are such eclectic feeders and are found all over. On the other side of fishing one spinnerbait, I'll tell you a quick little story.
Yeah.
There's a pond I fish fairly frequently, or used to fish, and there was a guy there that fished after work every evening. And he used a small buzzbait.
Right.
That's all he used. Small, little black buzzbait.
Right.
And he would fish just about year round.
Right.
Walking around that pond, he would just walk the pond and then go to work. And then on the way home, he'd walk around that pond and then go home. Okay, he did this until they stopped biting, and that was when the water got cold. You know,
Right.
You can still chase them out in cold water, but that's not his game. He did that, and that's great. That's the time he had to put into it. And if you ask him about bass, he would say, well, sometimes they bite and sometimes they don't. I've been fishing with people where I'm a fairly versatile fisherman, been doing it a long time and into that. I chase bass wherever they go.
Right.
I fished with people who I tell them to warn their wives ahead of time because this could get ugly. And so we're fishing together. And I'll give you an example. There was a guy I fished with years ago. He fished 2 lures. He had a topwater and he had a plastic worm. Poured his own plastic worms. It was pretty cool. We really hit it off. And so we went fishing. And we go around the pond. So one night we're night fishing. And he goes around and he's fishing his topwater. And I can hear it out there. Bloop, bloop, bloop.
Right.
I took a spinnerbait and just burned it. Splash, 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 splash. Let it go. He's like, bloop, 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 bloop. Splash. Ooh, got one, you know. Takes him a while, he lets it go. Right. And he casts. Bloop, bloop, bloop. I'm going around going, zing, 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 zing. Splash, 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 splash.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, what are you using? Spinnerbait. So he buys a spinnerbait. And then we go fishing again. And suddenly it's the jig. Suddenly it's the crankbait. Suddenly it's, oh my God. And you can do a lot with one lure. And my hat is off to you. And that's impressive as can be. And everybody should do that. Start with a jig, the ultimate lure, to learn fishing. But there are other things you can do. That guy's going to start tweaking his spinnerbaits. It's like conditions change. And that's bass fishing.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy.
That's the ugly side.
Yeah, man. I don't. We are going. We are just over. I think 35 minutes now into. But and I want to take advantage of this time.
Yes.
So post-spawn. Okay, we've been through spawn and post-spawn.
Yep.
What should we be expecting as far as behavior right now?
Okay, make this quick. The males are defending their fry. The fry lift off the bottom, and then they begin to spread out away from the nest. They stay together, and the male continues to guard them. I leave them alone. I leave those males alone. Personally, they're visible. They're aggressive. They are chasing off anything that's attacking their young. Mm-hmm. But they've been through hell, and I leave them be. But I will look for the females, and they recuperate fairly quickly. So females, especially in ponds, there's only so many males with beds. Once they have eggs, they drive females off. They don't want them there. They're done. So females, some of the females, especially larger ones that may still have eggs, still have the energy to produce eggs, are still looking for males. But they're hanging outside again, okay? I call them hangers. Mm-hmm. Males don't want them. The females still want to spawn, so they're in flux. But pretty soon, the water worms, their hormones shut down, and they go back into feed mode. Where they're headed is the early summer, and it's the next binge period, okay? That's when water is heating up into the best temperatures for growth for largemouths, and food is beginning to burgeon. And that is another binge mode. Now, in your water, you're not going to have the heat up. I think you're already heating up probably by then. I don't know. Your fish may already start dropping deep. I don't know. They're going to start following, but put it this way. They go back to feeding. Your females are going to go back to feeding. There's this talk in the bass fishing world about recuperating females. That's a short-term thing in my mind. They're pretty darn willing to eat when they come out. The problem is they're harder to find. Is they start to drop back in. There's a point where they often consolidate on key structures, and then they spread out to summer habitat. But those are feeders, and those are the ones I'm chasing. Most of the year, I'm chasing females. They're the biggest fish.
But that's a big question, and I think most of the guys are watching right now and trying to figure out, okay, how can I identify if I've just seen one? fish. How can I say that that is a male or that's a female? I mean, I believe everybody would, yeah, I believe
you can't
everybody,
accept by behavior.
yeah, I believe everybody here would agree that, okay, I can respect the male and you've been through a lot, but let's face it, majority of the fishermen, they want to catch the fish.
Yeah,
so if they see
absolutely.
a fish,
I'm not here to tell anyone what they should
no,
or shouldn't do.
I know. It's just
I'll
a
let them
behavior.
regulate. The regulations do that.
Yeah.
That's in the United States. That's very much the regulations. And I tell people like, should you fish in the spawn, blah blah blah. And I say, look at the regulations.
Yeah.
And go with that. That's the way to go. Personally, we all have our own personal interests and things.
Right.
So it's a male when he's got eggs and he's got a nest or he's darting fry or whatever. That's up to you. They're also, especially if you're only able to fish occasionally, you're paying to get him to fish. You see a bass, you're going to catch him. You're going to cast him. That's fine. That's what that pond's there for.
It's not the best thing. But, and again, remember that the bass here in Brazil is an invasive species. So it's not a natural species. So there is no regulation for bass here. And that's why it's hard, because the few places that we have bass in public water, if you can call it, there are not many, because guys fish them with nets and eat them. They don't know. They don't even know what they're eating, but they're catching everything they want. But and it's sad. But that's why even tournaments here in Brazil, and you saw this one video that I did with Chad Hoover from KBF. Even tournaments in Brazil for bass are not regulated. They can't be regulated because the bass is an invasive species. So it's just it's odd. It might turn into something better in the near future, because there is a lot of movements in that way. I mean, and we are getting together. The bass fishermen are getting together to a bigger structure and being more representative, to have a better representation here. And the Brazilian Confederation right now, it's growing to something very interesting, and maybe the black bass will be into that also. Probably as a
probably in I would think where you would have issues with that with regulatory agencies, and I don't know how it works there, in private ponds or even public fishing ponds or reservoirs or something, but where there are native species. Largemouth bass are a red list species. That means they are known to decimate native species, and so that can be an issue for agencies.
Even for wolffish. I mean, of course, the big ones, I don't see them eating the big ones. I mean, or larger than 12 inches. But,
right. No, bass are going to eat the small fish for the most part.
Ones.
Yeah. They eat small fish. It just has to do with a biodiversity issue, and that's that's an agency thing.
And
I mean, that's a different thing. You're talking about private ponds and developing fisheries. Let me just say one thing about largemouth bass. It's hard to wipe them out, both by commercial fishing and by angling. They grow relatively quickly, especially if you've got decent water, but they tend to reproduce pretty well, and often in many waters, too many bass is a bigger problem, where you end up with a lot of small bass. If you want bigger bass, you need fewer bass in there. So in some ways, some harvest is an important thing. Bass are notoriously hard to net. They don't get caught in gill nets as easily as many other fishes. They evade them. It's because they're so used to being around complex cover. They also don't seine well. You can't drag a net because their habit is to dive down into cover or onto the bottom, and seines go right over the top of them. This is a known thing in the fisheries world. So bass are hard to so if people are saying, oh, they're fishing out the bass, and definitely protect your big fish, I'd say, but bass are pretty hardy.
Oh, that's a good
Once they're
thing.
in there, they can be hard to knock down.
That's a good
Tough
thing.
customers.
Yeah. One other thing is that is amazing here is the size of the bass. And we are deviating a little bit of our talk here, but you know, how can we get these bass to really grow? I mean, considering that I don't know if that's a reality for us here. You did a real research on where we are right now, but as far as water temperature, and of course, I think that has to go with the forage also, with what they're eating, and the availability of it. The bass here, the bigger bass that we got, and it'll be and I think on register, it'll be a 55 centimeters. So it's not I think it's a 20 something. I can get you.
Let me just fire that up, because I want to know that.
Okay, yeah, inches.
Let me
okay, so here it is, 55. Yeah, that's a 21 inch, 22 inches. Okay, that's yeah, that's it, 55 centimeters.
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty much what northern largemouth bass will do. I don't know if yours are northerns or Florida. Yours would probably be northerns, but I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know that either. What I know from some guys here that everybody knows about something more than you do usually, but some guys always told me, they said to me, Mauricio, you know, our species, the species that came to Brazil, is not a one that tends to be big. You know that.
Okay, it's the northern largemouths, which in some way is a good thing. You know, if your water temperatures get cool enough, Floridas don't do well. Northerns generally do better, and they're also more aggressive biters. They're I think a good choice. So I'm looking at the centimeter chart here. 22 to 24. Okay, let's put it this way. Depending on the water body, if you want a bigger bass, it has to really do. Your climate is what your climate is. Okay. If it's a bit too hot for bass growth, that'll show up in the fish, and you may have to move up in elevation or farther south or whatever. You know your region, but if I'm looking at your mean water temperatures through the year, and they seem to fall right beautifully in a growth range for largemouths. And your waters are probably deep enough that they can get away. So let me just give you the temperatures. Growth is best between 50 and about 80. So between 10 and say 28
degrees Celsius. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
10 to 28 is the range. That's the range that they grow.
That's perfect here.
They peak growth at about the upper end of that, 28 or so. Okay,
right.
Peak. They can continue to grow into the 30s, low 30s, but they better have an awful lot of food to feed that racing engine. And that is not a common thing.
Yeah.
It's more common in, I say, the southern United States, where those water bodies crank out food. It has to do with the climate. So that's why bass and northern bass in the south of the United States break 10 pounds. Okay. Yeah. They don't break 10 pounds in the north. Okay. That's an absolute freak. Every state record is like 11 pounds. You know, it's like, most northern bass, you know, if you're getting fish that are 4 pounds, breaking 4 pounds, you know, those are good fish. But you got two things. You got temperature, and you're going to have to do that research yourself on your waters and decide what the water temperatures are, and then sheer amount of food.
Right.
If during midsummer you find a lull, like you're not getting your reaction bites and things, your water temperatures might be high. And high water temperature could be 80, could be, 70, or I'm sorry, could be 29 degrees, could be 28 degrees centigrade. That could be high if there's not enough food. And so what the bass have to do is downregulate. That's why they don't chase. However, at those times, there are periods when they will feed, they have to feed. And then very fast retrieves can do it. I would suggest, even in hot temperatures and stuff, you just try burning something in those hotter temperatures to trigger fish. Otherwise, you know, if that's not working, sometimes that's what I'll do in the summer. Get out there and burn.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's on, bang, 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 you call, it's like, whoa, you know, big day. But then you can do that, and you know you're throwing over bass, and they're not having any of it. Right. That's when you slow down. So it's water temperature and food, and they work together. Ideally, bass can be pretty happy at about 20 to 25 degrees C. They don't need as much food. They may not exhibit peak growth unless those temperatures maintain themselves for the full year, which you guys...
Yeah, it doesn't change much. Yeah, it doesn't change much. So, it's really hard to go low.
So if that's the case, then what's limiting your bass growth is going to be food. Mm-hmm. If the water body is productive enough and cranks out a lot of food, great. And it has to be food of the appropriate sizes. Here's the thing. Little tiny, you know, bass, they grow. So they go through more rungs in the food chain than any other creature. Fish do. That's because they grow. And as they grow, they need to eat larger and larger food. Yeah. All right?
Right.
If prey species are too big for most of the bass, like if there's a gap, you've got a lot of small prey, and then you've got some big adults, you may end up bass hitting a wall. They can only grow so big because they can't eat the big stuff, and the small stuff aren't quite enough to allow them to grow bigger. And that's the most common thing. You have this hole. You have fish that grow up to 3 pounds, you know, 2 kilograms maybe, and that's it. You might have a rare fish that broke the barrier,
right,
and can eat the big stuff. If you want to manage a pond, you've got to put food in there that, well, first of all, say it's productive enough to crank out its own food.
Right.
You manage for the prey fishes, and you want a full range of sizes of prey fishes that can take bass all the way through. And that requires some management, okay? If the productivity of the water is not there, you end up dumping in food. And that will be expensive. And I don't know what it's like in Brazil, but holy moly, to grow big bass, they'll eat a lot. And if you want, you know, 22-inch bass and numbers of them, you better make a separate pond and start, you know, fertilizing and raising prey fishes and feeding, because people have done it, but it's a big deal. So that balance of getting big bass, and that's why big bass are rare. They're rare fish. They're either highly managed for and it costs money,
right,
or it's a productive water body that is producing food through a full range. That means the prey species are also doing well. Yeah. And most natural systems do this.
Yeah.
You'll have years that are producing big bass, and then all of a sudden your big bass are getting thin and they're getting old, and it's like, oh, we're not catching any more big bass. And then you have to wait for another wave of awesome conditions,
right,
to grow big bass again. And thus we get gray hair and we get old and we watch our bass ponds and, okay, this pond, maybe another 5 years.
Yeah.
Maybe another 8 years.
Yeah, and this is what we have. You know, in Brazil, the record to note that I saw a note on it, it's a 5.5 pound. So it's 2.5 kilos, 2.4, 2.5, which is a sizable fish. But you know, compared to the what you can fish over Florida or other areas, you can get 10 pounders in 2 digits. I mean,
so I'm guessing
don't have that
with your water temperatures, from what I can see, and I don't know exactly, you've got the water temperatures to grow bass. You may not have the productivity or the prey species that can take them to really large sizes. The other thing, and since these are private, some of these are private waters, so maybe less of an issue, is it's possible that if commercial fishing pressure is so heavy that it's cropping down. Fish don't get old. Bass still do need, even when they're fed, they need 8 years probably to grow to be 20 inches.
Yeah.
So my guess is you've got the temperatures. You may not have either the productivity or the prey species that will take them to that size. Another reason that you're finesse fishing.
Yeah, exactly. As I told you, that's the majority of fishing. My friend, we are getting to a point here as far as time goes. I really would love to have an opportunity to talk with you some other time.
Love to.
Really thank you again for your attention. What I do is usually I do 5 questions to all the interviewers, it can be short. You can go as you want, but okay.
I'll try to keep them short.
Okay, so first of all, bait casting or spinning? Both of them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Remember we talked about the narrow road that we
right.
The expanding road. Spinning casting tackle for lures that pull back, that put pressure on big stuff. Spinner baits, anything that I'm burning quickly. Casting tackle is more efficient. It's just direct drive. It's just more efficient. And then heavy duty fishing like flipping or heavy cover or something if you have that.
Right.
But on the lighter end of things, spinning gets her done. And I have spinning tackle that's heavy. Okay, I'll use it for skipping, like skipping under brush and things. I can skip with casting tackle, but spinning tackle or skips that much better.
Less headaches also. You
get used to. You get used to. You have to get used to that kind of stuff, and it's just practice. Both.
Well, technique or a specific lure that you throw the most, that you like the most to fish?
Oh boy, it depends on time of year.
Yeah, I know you've been everywhere.
Depends on the behavior of those fish.
So so right now, as we are talking about spring, so in spring.
Okay. Well, if I've done this, if I suggest one lure, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give you the research behind it because there's research behind it.
I imagine.
And fishermen already know it. Okay. It's the stickworm.
Stickworm.
Okay. The Senko. There's a million knockoffs. You can even make your own. Okay. Whatever. It's that cigar shape. Okay. And there's research showing that spells food. So in your finesse circumstances, I would suggest a 4-inch stickworm, like a Senko or you name it. I use a few different ones. I'll even take a plastic worm and cut it if I want that cigar shape. And you can fish it any rig you like. I like a wacky rig that's hooked, in the center of the worm.
Yeah.
I use because they break off.
Yeah,
you're not hooking much plastic. There's those Elastec baits, that are stretchy.
Yeah.
Those are nasty. Don't put them in with any. They stay in their own bag. So I don't know if I recommend them, but they're very tough. But what you do is you take either a rubber O-ring, or you take a heat shrink tubing electricians use.
Yeah.
Heat shrink, just heat it. Cut off a little piece of heat shrink, slide your worm inside of it, and that's the collar that you hook through. And that'll make your worms last a lot longer. But
that's a nice tip.
4-inch, wacky rigged stick worm, and just fish it like live bait. You let it fall.
Yeah.
You pick it back up, you let it fall. It works for fish you can't see, fish you can see. It's dangerous.
Yeah. So, and now about the lines, braided or fluorocarbon or nylon?
All three.
Okay. It's hard with you because you got to research all them.
I have the stuff available to me. I used to sell fishing tackle and stuff, and so that's why I have a lot of old stuff. I'm still fishing with my 1980s tackle, and people say, "Oh man, you're retro," and I say, No, that's just my stuff, okay?
Actually,
if it ain't broke,
you probably got that already, a lot of guys, because there are probably some guys looking at your tackle and wanted to get them for them because, they return like vintage or something, like the old Corrados or the E-series or earlier than that. And there's a lot of guys looking for that, and there's a very expensive equipment right now.
Yeah. There's collecting that goes on.
Oh,
So basically, I use braid. So if I use one thing, it's braid,
right?
With a leader. Okay, I will not use a leader if in a real heavy cover or something. You're more on the finesse end, so I'm using a leader, and I use the nylon because it's actually, when you're talking leaders, it's not that much of a cost. You don't need much. In fact, fish are not afraid of the braid. Okay, and the fact that fluorocarbon is invisible to fish means nothing to the fish.
Oh, really?
They don't know what line is. That's not the problem. It's line moving in the water that scares them. And I don't care whether it's magic fluoro or whatever it is. As far as I'm concerned, and I have not seen anything otherwise, the boxes that say invisible to the fish mean nothing.
Really? This is a curveball for me.
That's what the fish think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because probably I've been sold the idea that it's better to have an invisible line and just so the fish would target only.
It's not invisible because it's not the vision that matters. It's the movement of the line in the water or the way the line affects the lure. Your line, you're not fishing a lure. You're fishing a lure with a line attached to it.
Right.
And that line may only be, that thick in diameter. It's that long. And it's running through a gelatinous medium.
It's moving
the water. Pressure on all that line is enormous. And the fish can be aware of that. And if they're spooky, your line will spook more fish than anything else.
Wow.
You can hide, you can leave your shadow, you can do all that kind of stuff. Try sight fishing. Your line is the problem. It's 40 feet long and it's landing on the water, and underwater, it affects the lure. So that's why your line diameter and your lure weight or the type of lure you're using matters. Now, if the fish are really aggressive or something, or the water's turbid or you're in a binge period or whatever, things get looser. But when things get tough, your line is killing you.
Wow.
So the fluorocarbon, what fluorocarbon offers is that it sinks. Mm-hmm. Monofilaments, nylons float.
Yeah.
And that matters when you start fishing deeper. Mm-hmm. It matters in terms of detection and the fact that if your line is floating and you're trying to keep your lure down, it keeps pulling it up. So you need to use, just a second, you need to use a heavier lure to make, but then you've got your line hooking in the water.
Yeah.
So when fluorocarbon sinks, it allows you to retrieve, to have a little more control in the depths. But it's more expensive. So I use braid with fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon bucks the wind a little better.
Yeah.
It affects the surface tension. I want my line to sink under the surface tension if it's windy, because that really affects your detection. It's just, you're educating your fish if you're giving them lures that they can bite and spit out. Once they've done that, that's not food. And so your detection really matters. And so fluorocarbon, I may end up using 25 feet or so many meters of fluorocarbon over my braid if it's really windy or something, because it just fishes that much better. But normally, again, they're not afraid of the braid. So I'm using 3, 4, 5, 8, 12 feet, a meter, 2 meters, 3 meters of leader, and match it to your lure weight and your hook size and stuff like that, and you're good to go.
Okay. Wow. That's actually a subject for another talk, man, for sure.
Sorry.
Because it goes like that. I mean, it's really interesting. Okay, so I noticed you fish out of a float
tube.
Yeah. So my question goes, I don't know if that's going to be a good question for you, but usually I'll ask you rather be fishing out of a boat, of a kayak, or from the bank.
So I'll do it all. I fish small waters, so I can fish from the bank. what getting into a boat offers is access, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have access to the entire water, where when you're fishing on the shore, you're limited to certain places and certain angles that you can cast to things. Okay.
Yes.
There are real advantages to fishing from the shore, which I won't get into.
No, yeah.
But so what I do is I fish from shore, from float tube, and from kayak. And that depends on water size. So if it's a small water, I want my float tube. If it's under, what is it, like 10 hectares or something like that, or 20 acres, anyway, or I just pick a small area. Because what's important in getting off the shore and being in a boat is control, precise control of yourself and your casting on a piece of structure or something, where you're fishing to. You don't want big bows in your line. You want to know where your lure is. If you catch a fish, you want to repeat that. You want to change angles on a structure. And a float tube is the most precise boat there is. Okay? It is complete control. Only drawback is it's slow.
and your foot,
not very high off the water.
And your foot on the water, doesn't that has a bad effect on the water because you had the, you know, if I'm not wrong, you're using fins on your foot?
Yep, you're using fins. Generally, no. They're used to water moving and things like that. You can spook fish by kicking hard or something, but just drifting around. Fish swim under my boat all the time. And even in 5 feet of water or 10 feet of water, 5 feet of water, I can have on my sonar, I'll see a fish right under my boat, just lower and catch them. The boat does not bother them. My kicking can bother them if I'm thrashing or something. That can just alarm fish for a short period of time.
But just a regular stroke, you're fine. I mean, they're not.
No, except very clear water, my shadow or something, I've noticed I can't troll too close to my boat in very clear water under bright sun or something, you know, that kind of thing. But generally, no, it doesn't spook them. Okay. Then there's the kayak, and that is for larger water. And that gives me the opportunity to cover water faster. Love my kayak. But I'm a boat control freak again, and I have anchors and my float tube I anchor. I mean, right. I want precision. And with a kayak and wind, you have to think ahead about, okay, what's the wind going to do when I anchor? Yeah. Which I don't have that problem with a float tube. I can do anything. And then the larger the boat gets, the more boat control issues you have. And that's why power poles and, you know, the fully outfitted bass boats that most people can't afford, you need a sponsor to run those damn things. You need equipment. And I've been in big boats that, you know, even, well, I'm going to cut it off there. Let's just say, if you don't have boat control,
you're fine.
You're in trouble. You're gonna catch just a few fish off the spot instead of banging them. So
So okay. So the last question for you, my friend, it would be what kind of advice or tip you would give to someone that wants to get into fishing?
A tip or advice to get into fishing?
Yeah, someone that is starting. I mean, there's anything that you can throw in. You can get. I know this is a large. This is a very. I have to ask,
why do people fish? Why, like, I would think that you're getting into fishing. There's a reason you're getting into fishing. You saw somebody do it or something. You saw a TV show or something. I would say, for me, now this is my attack. I love exploring outside. So if there's I mean, I'll tell you, I don't know a little kid who you don't bring next to the edge of a pond or a stream who isn't infatuated and playing in the mud and doing all that kind of stuff and infatuated. And water, the edges of waters are just so full of life. There's birds, there's turtles, there's just all this stuff. They're really cool places to be. So then there's some adventure with having your own fishing rod and going out and trying to catch a fish. And if you have success, if you have friends that, maybe that'll create something like me, just be careful.
Or even worse, like me, I'm a buying freak. I gotta stop that. But Paul, thank you so much. I mean,
Yes.
we had a blast.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm still, really, very, very thankful for your time. And it's a first here. It's I believe for you, it's a first interview to Brazil, to a Brazilian channel, if I may say.
Yeah, so, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and I want to do that more often if possible. If I want to call you up on some other issues,
sure.
if you were up to. I really appreciate it, and I'm pretty sure that other guys might ask a lot of things here that I might throw it to you. And
yeah.
I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for your time.
I'll watch for it, and I'll be happy to respond to comments or something.
Great.
If you get people asking questions, whatever. So let's keep in touch. Thank
you so much again, Paul. It was really nice to meet you and nice to talk with you again, my friend.
All right. Bye, Mauricio.
All right. Thank you.